You're not going to believe the way you can use a very unexpected tool to catch beetles and other crazy creatures in your backyard.
Now this is a trick I learned from the YouTube channel known as the Insect Hunter. This guy had a really cool trick that I've never seen before of how to explore logs for all kinds of really cool and even rare insects. And it's actually using one of these.
That's right, we're using a hammer to catch beetles. Don't believe me? Well, guess what? In the right conditions and habitat, you can find some neat beetles and their larvae with just a simple garden variety hammer. But of course, you can have the most awesome catching technique, and if you don't have the right conditions, you're not gonna have any luck. So what are the right conditions for finding awesome beetles in your backyard? Well, for your poster boy beetles like stags, pasilises, and click beetles, you're gonna wanna find yourself near somewhere wooded. These big, awesome beetles like to hide inside dead and rotting wood, and inside a woodland, you've got plenty of that. The next thing you want to do is find logs that are as near to water as possible. As a general rule of thumb, the closer you are to water, the higher biodiversity you're going to have, which means by law of averages, you're more likely to find a rare, elusive beetle closer to water. The other reason is, closer to water, there's more moisture, which means the logs will actually have a cooler internal temperature, making a much more comfortable environment for these beetles and their larvae where they live. Out here, I've seen passelis beetles, giant click beetles, and even giant stag beetles. So using this technique out in the woods, you never actually know what you're gonna find. Here is what you wanna do. We're gonna use the sharp end of the hammer, and it's essentially going to work like a pickaxe. Simply whack it into the log and then pull, and it will usually bring chunks of the log with it. What this means is you can actually gain access to burrows and insects that live deep inside the log that you normally wouldn't be able to get to. Don't be surprised if you see lots of termites and carpenter ants, and if you do see the ants, you probably want to pick another log. Ants love to kill pretty much anything that enters their nest, so the odds of finding something cool living alongside ants is pretty low.
One thing I want to make a quick note of is this is not a technique that you can really try out if you're at like a state or national park or really any wildlife preserves. This is strictly an in your backyard or maybe local park, because it is fairly destructive. Like, this is not going to ever go back on the way it was. Some logs you might be able to kind of piece the pieces back together the way you found it, so I would not recommend you use this technique at any kind of national or state park or areas where endangered species might be living.
Now let me tell you, this technique is super tiring. Throw in a little bit of heat and humidity, and you're gonna be a sweaty, nasty mess after doing this. But as hard as it is, it's pretty worth it because you can find some really crazy stuff just simply hacking into logs with a hammer. And here's our first find. Have a look at this. At first glance, this looks like a giant termite, but this is actually a beetle larva, specifically a mealworm beetle. This looks absolutely alien with its weird semi-translucent skin, and from what I can tell, an eyeless head. And with those strange looking jaws and antennae, it looks just like something that came from another planet. I guess it's not liking the warm air too much, that it's slithering right back into the log, but we're gonna keep on looking and see what else we can find. There's actually a whole pile of logs over here, so I'm gonna go through as many of these as I can to see what kinds of crazy creatures we can find using this technique. This log is looking like it's a little too hard to actually break too far into, but the bark is coming right off with this technique. Oh, here's something. This little guy is a wireworm, and oh, here's another one. You've actually probably seen these before if you flipped over logs or picked up bark out in the woods. But if you haven't, these guys are neat little predators that live inside rotting wood. And believe it or not, these are actually the larvae of, you guessed it, click beetles. I don't know about you, but I call that one heck of a transformation. It's possible that these are larvae of giant click beetles, but honestly, there really is no way to tell when they're in this stage. But how cool is that? Baby click beetles right inside a log. On an earlier adventure, I actually caught a species of social beetle, a passelis beetle, by cracking open a log using a different method. If you want to see that, check out the video right here. And if you want to see another incredible beetle encounter, right here is where I tested to see if the stag beetle has a dangerous bite. That's all for today, and I hope you enjoyed, but until next time, don't forget to get outside and and find your own adventure.